Good morning, everyone. Um, this is Barbara, and we've been talking about the 10 utterances, the 10 commandments, the 10 sayings. Um, and yesterday we talked about more about Elohim and who we are, and it was tied to uh, um, uh, not making any graven image or any idols and bowing down to any idols. And today, hopefully, we can get into not taking the name of Elohim in vain. But before we do that, as usual, are there any questions or comments or concerns about anything? It doesn't have to be about the 10 utterances. Feel free.
Hi, Barbara. This is Ronnie. I have something I'd like to and I hope this don't take us too far, of course, at least for a minute.
It won't. Ron, nothing takes us off course because everything is tied together.
Okay. On yesterday, I brought up the fact about the 17 earthquakes, and I want to tell you why I did that, and a couple other things I want to mention. I think as agents for the universe, those who are seeking truth, that makes us agents for the universe and to bring about balance into the earth. And those things are important that we mention. Even if we don't quite understand them or know what they are, I think it is important to give voice to these things. This last couple of weeks, I guess, but particularly this week, a couple of things I noticed. Kathy and I had, Kathy mainly got my attention to it about weather patterns and getting, the usual weather patterns we had seen and bringing things back into balance there and the normacy of what, the importance of that. And that's everything from the fires and the floods and whatnot. So as we've seen extreme weather this past week or so, last 2 weeks actually. So again, it's more in line with where things should be as far as the temperature-wise. I noticed yesterday that Boston had more snow than they usually average in all of January. They had it in a 24-hour period. I also have noticed that there's been several articles about land animals, the possibility of becoming extinct in the next 20 years, and nobody seems to raise a brow about that, and although a lot of those animals are birds and insects, but you also have the polar bear on that list, the Asian elephant, the Asian tiger, and different species of frogs in the Amazon. And so, I mean, this thing throws the ecosystem out of balance. There's a lot at stake here, but I just bring it up because I think we bear some responsibility for at least giving thought to it and hearing it and putting it in the macro. And I think, anyway, sometimes putting it out there may lead to solutions or at least giving someone energy to move in that direction to do something or to address it in some way. So these are just things that I've noticed that I thought were important, and I think it's important, again, that we at least give voice to them, even though they're not something that we can readily do something about overnight. Okay, but thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Any comments or responses to Ron before I respond? Just very briefly.
Yeah. Good morning, Barbara. And again,
morning.
I appreciate Ron you bringing this up, because as we, give thought to concepts and the things that we're learning as so above, so below, I think it's important for us to be able to appreciate that, putting out in the macro, we have the power, but this is why, again, science is so important. I think this is why us looking at it from a spiritual perspective is so important, because there are some people who may be aware of it or know it, but if they're using it for the wrong purposes or not wanting to deal with the truth, then I think spiritually we're looking at it from that perspective that we need to put it out there in the macro where hopefully, as you say, it may be evidence that we are now able to move from what we know to what we must do to create our appreciation for nature. So I appreciate you bringing that up, for the purpose of us just at least putting it out there in our thoughts. So I just wanted to, just thank you for bringing it up, Ron.
And George, to add to that, the cause of it all is all man-made. Whether you look at it from the perspective of global warming or clearing out forestry or overhunting. The other one I want to mention, that those 500 species that I mentioned are all land animals. The same thing is happening to our oceans because of overfishing, and they're expecting species to be wiped out within probably the next 100 years or so in the ocean, and you can see that decline and that ecosystem changing as well. So it's all done at the hands of man, and that means to me that if man caused a problem, man can also fix it. It's not too late. And as you said, I do believe this is a spiritual thing that that we are to recognize.
And also, Ron, in terms of religion is also man-made. So I just wanted to mention that thought.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for the discussion. Anyone else?
Yes, I agree that with what George and Ron have said, and I have given thought to the species that they were talking about being lost forever. And then when I thought about it, gave more thought to it rather, what came to mind is this. We have been talking about a return to the normal weather patterns that we have been, what we were accustomed to when we were much, much younger. When we grew up, we saw real winters in this area. And we saw the type of snowstorms in the Northeast as we are seeing now. But what makes them an anomaly now is because it hasn't been like that in 20 years or more. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is that I've seen a transition in progress with the weather patterns here. Like this week, it's going to be warm during the day, but here is not going to, at night, it's not going to get much above freezing. In most cases, it won't be out of the 20s. And what I'm saying is that it appears as though the winter is returning to where it's to its original state. And I do believe it's happening because of our desires and because we are indeed, as Ron stated, agents of the universe. I also think that with, no, I don't think it, I believe it, that the reason we have been guided for these 10 utterances is because, not just because of the utterances themselves, but what is behind the utterances. And Barbara had introduced to us the idea that they were written on stone of sapphire and the blue sapphire, and we understand what that represents spiritually, then we understand the nature of those 10 utterances. And I say that to say this. When we understand those 10 utterances and the background upon which they were carved, it brings us to a tipping point And the tipping point that it brings us to is the point where we either embrace the eighth sense for what it really is, or we don't. And the struggle to embrace it after the understandings that we are going to receive will be a struggle that is self-imposed. Because once we understand what we are receiving, and then our desire is to embrace and act upon the eighth sense, it is at that point when the agents of the universe will use the wisdom that has been gained in order to bring the earth back into rhythm with the universe. And bringing it back in rhythm with the universe means that those who are searching for truth and are dedicated to being agents of the universe have to be in rhythm with the universe itself. Once that is accomplished, then the earth can be brought back into rhythm, because we have been told that we are the dominators of this earth, and we have a choice. We can allow negativity, or we can allow that which is antithetical to Scripture. We can allow that which is dysfunctional, those thoughts, to prevail, or we can become the functionality of the earth itself for the purpose of bringing it in rhythm with the universe, which results in a reversal of everything that we are talking about in regards to animal species, as well as the weather patterns and the thoughts of man in relationship to how we relate to each other. As far as the species, there are species that are going extinct constantly. However, they were not going extinct at the rate that we see it now, and that can be mitigated by us. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things that I had written to myself as a question to you guys after studying the fourth saying, which was remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. And perhaps we'll get to this today, perhaps not, but I just wanted to put it out there since Ron asked the question. One of the things I had written was, well, wonder what would happen if the earth as a whole stopped doing anything to the extent possible that negatively impacted nature for 24 hours a day, or for 24 hours in 1 week. Every week for 24 hours, wonder what would happen if we stopped imposing our creative work on nature. Just let it be. Call a truce, if you will. Just let it be. Don't put anything in that means the factory would shut down for that 24-hour period. That means nothing would be going into the atmosphere or into the rivers or anywhere for 24 hours. Anyway, just think about that as we begin to talk about this and later on perhaps in more detail talk about the question that Ron brought up and that George spoke to.
Or
And
I
that
think
Pastor.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think we actually saw it when COVID first hit and everything shut down.
Yes, we did.
we saw how the air, like in India, they hadn't seen the mountains for like years, and the air cleared up, and there were the mountains. And lots of other places.
Same as in China.
Yeah. Lots of other places. Yes. Things cleared up. The air got cleaner. Animals started coming back to their habitats. So we've already seen what can happen.
Where I was headed,
Wow.
I was headed. And I think we've been shown that You know how the creators show you stuff, and then you have to go back to the beginning in order to learn how to get to that place?
Yeah.
I remember the healings happened with me that way. I think the Creator showed us quite a bit during that period that Audrey is referring to, the COVID period, and I think that we were shown that because the Creator was saying to us, this is what it should look like. This is what it will be when you embrace the eighth sense, because that is embracing all of the attributes of who you were created to be.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I just want to say, add to that what just what Audrey and Pastor just said. I got a lot out of yesterday when we talked about the idol and that level of comfort that you have can be negative things. So you get out of your mind. Don't let that idol be that I can't do this, or why me? I'm just Ron. I'm just this. I was from this background. I'm not educated or whatever. Whatever that thing is that's bigger than you that overtakes you in your head. When we get past that, and as Pastor said, the eighth sense and pulling all this stuff together, we are not helpless, and we see these things because no one else has this vision. You have asked to see it, and we see it and we appreciate it, and so we are just understanding now the how-tos of how to pull all this together. So that to me is exciting. It's not something to dread or to worry about, oh, this thing is going to happen. No, it doesn't have to happen. It's an exciting time as we grow and understand who we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And the thing about understanding who we are is not only are we not helpless, we are much more powerful. And don't mean power in a negative way, but much more powerful than we believe that we are. And could it be that the underlying just before we cross that line of just saying, yeah, Elohim is who I am, that we are a little reticent, we're a little hesitant, because there is responsibility and accountability with that power, and we're a little reticent about just accessing all that Elohim has poured into us as part of its image. And so this is saying we're getting ready. We're in the shallow part still, in a sense, but probably much further out in terms of the depth of the essence. But we're still kind of in the shallow part. But wow, we're plunging in the deep now, and the deep is understanding that it does not overtake me. That it is I and I am it. And the deep part of the essence is understanding that this is who we are, that it is nothing to be shied away from, and it is for everyone who takes the responsibility and the accountability for being Elohim, being created in that image. So it can be a little scary, or it cannot. So right now I'm choosing not, because as Ron said, we can take those negative things and blow them up and make them mountains, or we can decide, oh, that's just a little molehill. That's nothing. That can't stymie or prevent what is to be from happening, and that we do have power and authority and input into how creation unfolds. because that's what's happening here. What the sages say is that, well, I'm getting a little ahead. Anyway, let's go to the third commandment. We've talked about the majesty and the mightiness and the authority and the omniscience and the goodness and the judgment and we've talked about lots of attributes of the Most High, and we've said this is the reason why we understand that there is one source of all that's created, both in the earth as well as the human itself. We understand that. And the second verse talked about not making any representation or image above heaven or earth or below, or the water below the land. In other words, nothing can represent the image of the Most High because we are that image. Why would we allow something else to represent when we are the legitimate representative of Elohim in the earth? Clearly, we are told we are created. The human is created in the image of Elohim. So if we allow anything else to represent, we are shirking our responsibility. We're turning our back on that relationship. We are being unfaithful to that relationship. That we are stealing from ourselves and from the one that made us and created us. All of these commandments come into play. All of these utterances come into play when we don't take our legitimate place, if you will, in terms of understanding and recognizing who we are and our authority in this realm and our responsibility in this realm. And so we do that knowing that we've all been listening to past teachings of the balance that's played out in the tree of life. We do that understanding that we've got to be the balance. We've got to be the one that keeps things from tipping over one way or the other. There can be too much goodness. Too much goodness can be detrimental. Too much judgment can be detrimental. We are the ones that establish that relationship in terms of balance. And so there is nothing, no inanimate object, nothing that can be created to replace that. And so we just need to be the quote unquote, for lack of a better word, the adult, the mature one who understands this and acts on it. So now we're getting ready to talk about the name of God. It says that we should not take the name of God, your Lord. I'm sorry. You should not take the name of God, your Lord, in vain. God will not allow the one who takes his name in vain to go unpunished. Another rendition of that.
Can I back you up a little bit?
Yes, sir.
I want to back up to this engraven image.
Yes.
And resemblance of it. And the reason I say that is because it talks about we should not bow to it and we should not serve it because I am. We should not bow to it, meaning that we should not submit to it. We should not serve it. What does it talk? What's the it? It's not just making a carving of a fish or a golden calf. It's also, as I see it, it goes far beyond that. It looks at science itself. We should not look to science to change things in the earth. We can look to science to understand them, what their makeup is. But in order to change the environment, science is not going to do that. We have to do it. Science has shown us the damage. We are the repairers of the breach. And to bow to something means that you have given your power over to it. You have given it rulership over you. You have given it the ability to do what it chooses with you, and that's some of the things that we have done. We have given religion rulership. We have given government rulership. We have given science rulership. All these things we've given rulership that in actuality were things that we should not have been doing. We should not have been submitting to. And that is the reason that the zeal of our Creator has left us. The zealousness of who we are has left us, and we have simply relegated ourselves to being the worshipers or the submitters to everything that we deem in our mind and with our sight to be stronger than what we are, or to be more dominant than we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. And you ended with what I was thinking, that not only are we talking about created animate things, but inanimate things too. If we've got an image in our mind, that's different in our brains, that's different from what we know Elohim to be, that's a graven image also. As we ended talking yesterday, if we call ourselves anything less than who we are, that's a graven. That's something that we've got to as Moses did, just throw it down and get it out of the way so that we can see who we really are. If you look at what we've been talking about with the first two utterances, they've been more in the realm of thought, of spiritual essence in the realm of thought. But we're getting ready to get into do not take the name of God, your Lord, in vain. This is more into speech, if you will. Another rendition of that is, you will not lift up the title of Yahweh, your Elohim, for the falseness. Given that Yahweh will not acquit one who will lift up his title for falseness. And then still one more verse. And what I'm trying to do is, with myself, is to read in several different versions of it, because it helps me begin to ask the questions in my mind of what does that mean? What does that mean? Another one, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day, I'm sorry, I'm off. You can tell I want to get to the Sabbath real bad. You can tell. I want to get to where Ron is. We're talking about taking the name of the Lord your God in vain. So I've read it twice. The third rendition is, you shall not swear falsely by the name of the Lord your God. For the Lord will not clear one who swears falsely by his name. So we have a speech component in here now. It says that what we are in our minds and what we believe we are in our heart, then what we utter in terms of speech has to be aligned with that image. And if the utterance is different from the image, then we are taking the name of the Lord in vain. In other words, why even say anything if you're not going to line up with what you know the truth to be? I'm still here. I'm just trying to get my when we swear falsely, then, is somebody going to say something? It was said, it's been said that the entire world trembled when Elohim said this utterance. The entire world trembled. Do not take the name in vain. Do not lift up the title for falseness. Do not swear falsely by the name. Using that name to swear falsely affects the entire world because Elohim created the world with the letters of its name. Everything is created with the letters of the name. We are created with the letters of the name. So the entire world suffers the consequences of our action when we use that name and we lift it up for anything other than the purpose and the function that Elohim has laid out for us. The word swear, Shabbat, means to take an oath, such as like to strongly affirm something, to affirm a promise or to affirm something. Take, nasa, N-A-S-A, to lift up, to bear, to carry off, accept, respect, exalt. Name, Shem, means breath. A name is the person's breath, his character, reputation, and the Eastern sees the breath of both the human and Elohim as having the ability to carry thought or emotion. Vain, Shava, S-H-A-V-A, means emptiness. Emptiness of speech, lying, false, worthless, to no good purpose. Vain actions then are empty of substance, empty or thoughtless, doing something in an empty or thoughtless manner, meaning to take it as just an aside. There is no way that we are have the responsibility to take the name as an afterthought. That's what this is saying. We've already talked about the awesomeness. We've already talked about being created in that image. And so the third utterance ties directly into that. And it says, okay, you've thought about this, this is who you are. Now you make sure that your speech is aligned with that. Don't lift this title up for the emptiness. Don't swear by using this name for vain things, for empty things, for things that don't mean a hill of beans. In other words, it's telling us to be serious about how we approach the title, because a name represents the entity. A name represents the breath. It represents the authority of the entity. The name represents the essence of the individual, of the entity. The name represents the character of the entity. And so, just as much as we revere the Creator and are grateful that we are created in that same image, then we need to revere the name and not tie it to loose stuff. Let me stop there, see if there are any thoughts or comments.
I have.
Hey.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Pastor. This is Ron. I'm listening to you, and one of the things that came to mind, it reminds me of my childhood. you know, as all of us, I guess there were ebbs and flows in your childhood, but the fondness of it was my relationship mainly with my grandfather. And I had a good relationship with my dad as well. But I remember my grandfather sitting down with us and talking about scripture and how to behave and how to carry yourself and all those lessons that, you know, and he was my maternal grandfather. And he'd sit down with my dad, though, and we'd sit there and talk and just not just listen to them talk for hours. And they never forgot us, although they may be adults sitting there talking. They always bring the conversation back to us and say, hey, always remember who you are. Remember how you were raised, and you're going to see this and you're going to see that. And this, you know, just remember when these things happen, who you are. So as much as they could, they gave us scripture and things to think about. And when those challenges did come, I thought about them. And it did influence my behavior, not out of fear of the consequences, although that was part of it too, but it was just a love and respect of not wanting to embarrass them or remembering who I was, as they said, and what I was taught. So I listened to this because what I'm describing is the character that they gave me, the character that they were, as we talk about name, you know, it stuck with me. It changed who I was. They gave me an image to look at, and looking at their character helped shape my character. So I listened to how you said this. It's not only speech, it's not only action, but it does tie to everything else that we've said here. And all of this is a shaping or building into the character of who we're supposed to be, and helping us to remove the lens that we've seen ourselves as, and to see who we truly are. So I just thought about that, you know, my past and upbringing and how all this kind of ties together, and helps me to see what you're saying. Thank you.
Pastor? Thank you, Ron.
What I was going to say, sort of kind of start along those lines. I remember when I left home, I was given the 27th Psalm, the Lord is my light, and my salvation. Of whom should I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom should I be afraid? Those words were given to me. Always remember that. And it's kind of in the sort of way that Ron is talking about his grandfather. Actually came from my grandmother. And in saying that, the next thing I wanted to at least present along those lines is this. When we talk about the name, as Barbara said, we're talking about the character, about the nature of Elohim. And if we represent it falsely, if we don't live our lives according to these utterances or according to the character of Elohim, then we are taking the name, that character, in vain. We're making it empty, having no meaning and no power. We're representing it falsely, and coupled with that, what I see is something that many people and people on the phone are resisting, and that is, at some point, those who are still engaged in these religious activities, who have chosen to remain under the authority of religious powers, are going to have to choose whether they're going to serve the God on this side of the river, which is meaning on the God that you are learning about, the Elohim who created you in the way, in his image, or are you going to continue to serve the God on the other side of the river, which means that are you going to continue the God of religion, the one that you were given, who has absolutely no power and whose attributes are unreal because he's not an authoritarian seeking to punish you? Which one are you going to serve? That choice is, we are on a knife's edge of that choice having to be made. At some point, that's going to happen. Either you're going to walk away from it, or you are not going to be able to fully embrace the character of Elohim. You are not going to be able to be representative of Elohim. Why? Because you cannot be submissive to two authorities. If you're pastorally submissive or denominational submissive, then you are not submitting to Elohim. Submitting to Elohim simply speaks to the idea of bowing to Elohim. And bowing to Elohim speaks to the idea of embracing who you are, submitting to what you were created to be. Submitting, like you fought against your parents, and now you have to be submissive to the parent. It's not the people; it's what they've been trying to tell you that's right. So, in that regard, it's talking about submitting to Elohim, submitting to the characteristics of Elohim. It is impossible, not improbable, but impossible to be submissive to the characteristics of religion, denomination, or however you want to term it, whatever excuse you make for it. It is impossible to be submissive to those authorities and at the same time submit to who you were created to be. Anything short of embracing who you were created to be is false witness, bearing false witness to the character of Elohim. And it's even worse for those who know better and still are not following the journey of doing better. So I keep going back to this eighth sense. You can forget it. There is no way in the world that you're going to have an experience in this eighth sense with the ability to change the course of the destruction that we are facing without disengaging from the authorities of religion. And don't convince me, because the Creator knows your thoughts, and the Creator knows where your loyalties are. My words are a warning and instruction so that you will not get caught up trying to be something that you are not, or trying to be something that you know you are, but yet holding on to what you're not. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. And when you talked about carrying that name in vain, not only are we carrying the name of the Creator in vain, but we're carrying our name in vain as one created in the image of Elohim. So it's anytime we what these utterances are showing us is that they are about not only the Creator but about us, because it is the Creator who has poured in, who has placed its essence in us. And so what it's trying to show us is that we are one with, and that this is the realm that we have been given, the gift that we have been given to exercise authority and dominion over, and to do it in the way that the Creator itself would do it with precision and balance, with love, mercy, and judgment, to do it in a way that we show compassion. So that's what these utterances are teaching us. We're saying that thou shalt not do this and blah, 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 but it's also, we have to understand that we are cutting ourselves off when we don't acknowledge who we are as well as the Creator itself. So taking up, bearing, carrying, accepting, lifting up. It says, don't take that name in vain. Don't lift it up in vain. Don't lift it up for unworthy things. Don't empty it of its character by the way that we approach it in a way that's glib and a way that's flippant. That there is no way that we should be approaching that name in that way, as we understand and acknowledge the essence of that name. Elohim's name is its character. To carry it or lift it up in a false, empty, thoughtless, flippant, casual manner takes it in vain. And this is the part that kind of reminds me of the verse that talks about stealing and kidnapping. This is tantamount to that when we take it in vain. We take it up. We don't acknowledge what it means to us. We treat it as worthless. We treat it as if it's of none effect in our lives. That's emptying the name. Although we know that the name is really not empty, but to us, it is empty. And it's like an empty wagon that makes a lot of noise. What comes out is just noise. It has nothing to do with aligning our words with creation, and aligning our words such that creation is enhanced and continues, rather than empty words that are just out there and that are just bouncing off the universe without resonance, without rhythm. It's a major disconnect. It's like the sound that's made when an orchestra is tuning up and they're playing totally different notes from each other because the instruments are different, and the note that might tune one instrument is not the note that another individual playing the tuba wants to hear in order to tune. It's discordant, if you will. It just sounds like noise. To lift up the character, the name, is to make it known. When we lift the name up positive, it's to make it known. So we've got to make sure that we don't dishonor it, that we don't belittle it, that we don't swear falsely with it. We shouldn't use the name to make our lives more believable, if you will. I swear to you, I'm going to do this here, blah, 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 and it's a total lie. We should not use it. That's part of the emptiness, and that's part of the irreverence rather than reverence. Another way to say this is that you shouldn't represent the name, the character, falsely. Again, we are the image bearers. We are the image bearers and should be representing that character, that reputation, and not misrepresenting it. Thank you, sweetie. I appreciate that. Thank you, honey. Thank you, darling. I appreciate it. Okay. In the Hebrew mind, again, I think I said this yesterday. It's not the appearance of something that they concentrate on, but it's the function of something. In other words, you can show me beauty all you want, but when someone acts or says something, is beauty what you see? It's a function of Elohim and its purpose and its thoughts that we've got to be mindful of. So this representation then is that name, that Shem, that breath, that character, that reputation. All of that is about the function of Elohim, and we've got to show this others. If we live our lives contrary to Elohim's character and function, we are taking that name in vain, and we are falsely representing that character. We violate this utterance when we do that. When we empty that name of its true substance, its true awe, its true omniscience, omnipotence, by using it in a worthless or thoughtless or frivolous manner for our own selfish desires, we violate or disobey that utterance. Again, we steal the weight of that majesty. We steal it when we, and that goodness and that power and that authority when we empty it of its character and function by irreverence and by just using it as an aside. Other questions? Or comments?
Go ahead, whoever that was. Was there someone else about to say something?
I don't believe so.
Okay. I thought I heard someone trying to. Okay. First of all, what happened just a moment ago, you showed what it means to be Elohim without even knowing it. You shifted from being a teacher to being a grandparent, because I take it that was someone else you were talking to.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my husband.
No. That's not an apology. That's a compliment. That does not require an apology. This is a compliment. Why? Because we are structured so that we don't forget who we are, regardless of how things are around us. That's a perfect example of, without any thought, being what you needed to be at the moment that you needed to be it. That's a teachable moment. Now, before that happened, I have been wrestling with something because I did not complete what I was shown when I was talking about having to walk away from religion, the church, Christianity, etc. I said a lot of things to you guys about what was to be, what was going to happen. Because I've been shown a lot. The completion of what I was saying is this. The day is nigh. The day is close upon us when the proclamation will be made. It's time for you to come from amongst them. It is time for you to separate yourselves from the powerlessness of religion. Time to separate yourselves from the violence of Christianity, the ignorance of the scriptures. It is time for you to separate yourself from the Jesus of the church. Connect yourself with the Jesus of the Bible. That is going to happen at some point. And the thing that I struggle with is this. I heard, in uncertain terms, I heard that the day will come when I will say to you, either you separate yourselves or you put yourselves in peril for the rest of your life. It's imperative that choice be made. That is not condemnation. That is simply saying to those who the Creator has given me the opportunity, the privilege of covering, those who have lend their ears and their hearts to what's happening. Some hard things are coming that's going to have to be said, and one of them is, it's time for you to choose this day. That's not going to come from you reading it in the scriptures. It's going to come from the depths of my heart and from my lips. So I say that to prepare you for the hour when it's said. You will understand. You will feel it. It will resonate deeply with you. And at that juncture, you're going to have to make a choice whether you enjoy the excitement of powerlessness or whether you choose to embrace the power, the presence of who you are. Sometimes.
And is that not what the study of these utterances is saying about the Israelites as well? You know, you had your period of time. You had 400 years of religion, and now it's time for you to know that this is who you are. This is who I am. This is who you are, and that to do anything otherwise jeopardizes your life, because it literally in the scriptures taught in the utterances talks about that. So it's saying the same thing in effect. Other comments about that? The reason I ask is because, I mean, the comments can come later. You know, we've been going back and forth between all of these utterances. So the reason I ask about that is I'm ready to move on to utterance number 4.
So, Barbara, may I ask, was everyone clear on what I said a few moments ago?
Yes, I am.
I am.
Okay, I just want to make sure that there are not questions or comments about it. And I must confess, my struggle with saying it was because of the deep-seated things that I've learned from church itself. And that is, who do you think you are? Well, now I can truly say I don't think I'm anyone. I know who I am. And that is the reason it's imperative that I tell you where these words are coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments at this point?
I wanted to just say that in listening to you describe what we should not be doing in terms of reverencing the name, it just reminds me of something we talked about a long time ago. It's somewhere in Romans. I can't even find it, but anyway. But it was talking about how we make God powerless. And what you've been describing is exactly how we make him powerless. Because if our motivation is not to reverence the name of the Most High Creator, if we're taking it in vain, then actually we're not talking to it, or we're not giving deference to it. We are talking to whoever we have created in our own heads. And because of that, we're talking to the God that we have created for ourselves. And that is exactly why there is no power and we don't exactly understand who we are, because we create things and then we change them based on how we feel we need to be, or how we feel we want things to go. So we're not actually speaking to the Elohim or the Ein Sof. We're not. We're just talking to something we created in our own heads, in our own minds.
Yeah,
So
we're talking about graven image.
that is
that graven
exactly
image
how
we
it
created.
That is exactly why there's no power there. Anyway, that's what I was thinking.
Excuse me. One of the verses you're talking about is Mark 7:13, making the word of God of none effect through your tradition, which you have delivered, and many such things do ye. So that's one of the verses that speaks to something of what you're saying.
Right. Yeah, and I can't find the other one. So anyway, but yeah, that one's appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. That's exactly right. That is the difference. We are going to continue to worship the God that we created, and in whose image we are created. The God that we created, in whose image we are created, and subsequently have no power, or will we worship Elohim, the God that created us and gave us all power. Alrighty then. Any other comments before we move on to? We can at least begin the discussion of verse of utterance number 4. Alrighty, I'm moving ahead, and if you have any questions, always stop us and we'll go back. Remember the Sabbath, Exodus 20 verse 4. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. You can work during the 6 work days and do all your tasks, but Saturday is the Sabbath to God your Lord. Do not do anything that constitutes work. This includes you, your son, your daughter, your slave, your maid, your animal, and the foreigner in your gates. It was during the 6 days. It was during the 6 weekdays that God made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on Saturday. God therefore blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. Now that's one rendition of it. In Benner's translation of the Torah, it says this: remember the day of ceasing to set him apart. 6 days you will serve, and you will do all your business. And the 7th day is a ceasing to Yahweh, your Elohim. You will not do any business, you and your son and your daughter, your servant, your bondsman, your bondswoman, your beast, your immigrant in your gates. Given that 6 days Yahweh made the skies and the land, the sea, all which is in them, and he rested in the 7th day. Therefore Yahweh exalted the day of the ceasing and set him apart. And then final version of it is from the Torah and commentary. And it says, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God. You shall not do any work. You, your son or daughter, your male or female slave, or your cattle, or the stranger who is within your settlement. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and sea and all that's in them, and he rested on the 7th day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So, in order to really, really understand the essence of this, we got to kind of understand where all of this came from. Elohim embedded in creation the separation of one thing from another. If you remember light from darkness, waters of the heavens from the waters of the deep, that kind of thing. So the principle of work and ceasing is one of those principles that was embedded in creation, if you follow what I'm saying. The conclusion of the work of creation was not making the first humans, but imposing on this world this rhythmic perpetual order, if you will, of 7-day rest. In Genesis, where we're going next, this was not explicitly called Sabbath, but it related to what was to happen on the seventh day. So what I'm saying is that just like the template that was used for creation and in this world, it was based on duality with the spirit being embedded in that, work and ceasing to work or not working, stop working, was also embedded as a principle. And it's important to see that because we know now that there are some entities, that there are things that go on 24 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, 365 days a year, continuously. The work still occurs. So then, if we go to the beginning of the creation story in Genesis 1:1, it opened with a statement about God, Elohim. And if you go to Genesis 2:3, it closes with a statement about God and Elohim. I'm turning to Genesis, it's what you hear me doing. But even more than that, Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 2:3. I haven't found it yet. I haven't found Genesis 1:1. Yeah, it's funny. Okay. It talks about talk among yourselves while I find Genesis 1:1 in my book, because I'm looking at three different ones, and one is the Torah that reads from the back toward the front, and then another one is the Torah that reads the other way. Let me see, Benner's. Let's see what Benner says about it. Okay. Benner says in Genesis 1:1, in the summit, Elohim shaped the skies and the land had existed in confusion and was unfilled, and darkness was upon the face of the deep water, and the wind of Elohim was fluttering upon the face of the deep. And then in the end, in Genesis 2:3, Benner says, and Elohim exalted the seventh day, and he set him apart, given that in him he ceased from all of his business, which Elohim shaped to make. Another version of that says, when God began to create heaven and earth, Genesis 1:1, now 2, the earth being unformed and void with darkness over the surface of the deep and a wind from God sweeping over the water, God said, let there be light, and there was light. and everything else that occurred between Genesis 1:1 in terms of how it created the earth. When it got to Genesis 2:3, this is what it says. I'm sorry, let's go to 1:31. And God saw all that he had made and found it very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. Chapter 2, the heaven and the earth was finished and all their array. We talked about that before, all of the creation, everything that God had created in that form. On the verse 2, on the seventh day, God finished the work that he had been doing, and he ceased on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that he had done. So, what this says to me is that here at Sinai, when they were given the utterances, and this is the fourth utterance of Sinai, this is not the first time that this template for seventh day rest was used. It was used in the foundation of creation, and it was used as the ending of creation that God created to create. Not the human, but the seventh day of ceasing. So let me stop there and see if there are any observations before I go on.
Sabbath. It literally means to cease or to stop. And how do we observe it, or why do we observe it? Why was the Sabbath, or why was Sabbath at the end of the day, the last day, which we call Saturday? Why? Because Sabbath was there to say to us, you've done all that you are desired to do during the course of this week. You've handled your business. You've handled everything. Now it's time for you to return to the covenant. It's time for you to stop and reflect on the covenant, meaning that it's time for you to cease everything and reflect on the utterances that gives you an understanding of who we are. And the we of whom I speak is not just us as humans, but the we of whom I speak is remembering who we are is the human and Elohim who created the human. That's how I see this based upon what transpired, coupled with the ceasing, the meaning of Sabbath, speaking to the idea of ceasing. Questions, comments, power dream, somebody?
Yeah, and in this first one in Genesis, it was not called Shabbat at that time. It was called simply ceasing. And later, in Exodus, where we're going next, we will see where it calls it the Sabbath, day of the Lord.
And that,
yes, Charles.
That's
yes, Pastor.
The literal meaning of Sabbath.
Exactly. You're exactly right. It says cease, so you're right. Yes, Charles.
I was going to confirm what Rev had said. I mean, we ain't never did that. I mean, we worked every day, and Sabbath day, it kept it holy, but we don't know how to, we don't done it the wrong way for so long. I mean, God forbid, we just don't know how to do it the right way.
Well, but Charles, unless we knew we were Elohim back then, what was the advantage of doing it? It would have been a form and a fashion and not the essence of who we truly were. And that's why we have to do these utterances now, because they reveal, now that we understand who our essence is, then the next question is, how do we show forth the ceasing that is built into the fabric of creation? So all before, when we were in religion, I don't know, except that it would have been in vain, because we didn't know who we were. Not really, if you follow what I'm saying.
I follow.
Also, Barbara, what we look at also is that the changing for the day of rest to Sunday was done by those from whom no spiritual beliefs have ever emanated. That was done in honor of the worship of the sun by Alexander, and it was done for to worship a man, and that is the reason. One of the reasons I see pastoral worship as I see it today, because the first day of the week was considered the day that you submit to man, submit to the powers of the animalistic attitudes and thoughts. It was shifted from that Sabbath, the last day. And now what happened in the past is that the reason Saturday and Sunday people are off from work is because of the Sabbath, as well as the worship of Alexander. That came from the Christianity. Sunday did the worship of Alexander, and Sabbath comes from the scriptures themselves. So, Charles, we are in a place now where people are forced to work on Saturday and Sunday, for that matter. So this is not as much of a physical observance in terms of returning to the utterances of the covenant as it is a spiritual remembrance. In the same vein as do this as often as it requires you to remember me, this is about remembering, putting together in our thoughts the utterances, so that we will never lose sight not only of who we are, but how we were fearfully and wonderfully made, and the character, the essence of the one who made us is who we are. Is that clear?
Yes, it is.
Pastor, can you, I think I've always questioned or just looked at is where does our submission to time fall? And at some point, there wasn't always a 24-hour day, and there wasn't always 12 hours or 8 hours. And I think somehow we got to the point of where we submitted to just time. Can you explain how we free ourselves from the bondage of time in general? Because that wasn't always the case, and that's just something I've always questioned. Because when you do look at a work week, somehow I guess 13th, 14th century, somebody created these 24-hour days, but from a spiritual perspective, at some point it seems like we submitted to that time construct. How do we get out of that mindset?
What happened is, prior to the day being broken up in hours, the day was set by the sunrise to the sunset. That was one day, and the night was one day. However, again, when the Europeans created Christianity, that began to change. And the reason it started to change is because people started working for other people and going back home. So there's some in the beginning, they still worked. They worked 10, 12-hour days, and then they would return home. However, when time was broken up into hours, there was a change in that. And the change in that came with the increase in the embracing of Christianity. And with the embrace of Christianity, the times were set for the period when you would go to church. In the beginning of that, there was a 6-day work week because there was no respect for Judaism at all. That changed with the impact of business and how those who were who believed in Judaism would close shop on Saturday in order for them to cease the work, as the scripture said. All of this was religious, rituals. So that's how we got the 5-day work week. And how did we get the time element? The time element became consistent in this country before it did in Europe. And the consistency of time in this country became real when the trains were traveling because people had to be at the train station at the right time in order for the train for them to catch the train. So that's when they actually standardized time itself. Now, how do we free ourselves from those constraints? All of these elements that I've mentioned are elements that were introduced by a group of people who had no sense of spirituality at all and did not care anything about spirituality if it impeded their progress in taking over everything and controlling all people. So the way we do that is simply taking advantage of the opportunities that we have to return to covenant, to return to the place of understanding the utterances. As far as the physical work is concerned, how that is going to change for us to be able to embrace that 7th day, I have no clue at this juncture. I don't see that. But what I do see is that the Creator has put us at an advantage with COVID. The advantage that it gave us is that we are able to begin to end our week with Saturday, remembering the covenant. And then on the beginning of the week, which is today, Sunday, we are continuing to remember the covenant. And on Mondays, we have opportunity to continue it or do Q&As. And if you notice on Mondays, most of what happens is a Q&A. So the point of my saying this is this. What the Creator has given us the opportunity to do is to take the power out of the religion of Sunday and replace it with the power of ceasing on Saturday for the express purpose of energizing in a beneficial way humanity for the rest of what they have to do during the course of that week. And we have begun to see changes in the thoughts of humanity. It's because the infusion on Sunday reaches people. What do I mean? On Sundays, people are open to what they believe to be spiritual experiences. we have an opportunity with that openness to infuse spirituality and a greater understanding of it into those doors that are open, seeking spiritual understanding of the spiritual realm. And that in itself comes to us as a result of our being connected as we are yesterday, so that we can do an infusion today and address it again on Monday. And again, as I end, I don't have a clue as to how we will deal with ending this physical man-imposed work week in terms of time. As I hope that helps. Thanks.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I just always, I'm sorry, look at that when we start looking at ourselves as, really being creators, and how time shouldn't matter in the sense of what we create or measure what we create. But it's like, we kind of get sidetracked by trying to do so much in a certain time period or a certain time of day, and how that really, it shouldn't matter to us. We should create when the sense of creation is necessary for us, and not measure it in the sense of time, or trying to say we're going to get X amount done in this time period. And it seems like, spiritually we kind of get locked into that sometimes. And it's just, I guess it's hard really to look at it when we create and measure the time. So I've always struggled with the time frame that things are given to us in.
May I address that again before the person who had a question raises it? If you look at what Jesus said, there were those who came in the first part of the day, those in the middle of the day, and those at the end. All of them got the same reward. He used that as an illustration of the kingdom, of course. However, he was using that illustration that the people were familiar with. What were they familiar with? That people were searching for work, and some would come to that place of work in the vineyards at the beginning of the day, and some would come later on in the day. So when we look at that in regards to our getting sidetracked, we have a responsibility to make sure that we don't get sidetracked spiritually, because spirituality is not bound by time. And when we are representative of the image in which we were created, when we are representative of the character of our Creator, when we employ that, regardless of where we are not bound by time. What's bound by time is how long we are on that particular job, or how long we're at a game, or what time we have to be at a theater to see a movie, or what time we have to get to a store before it closes. The spiritual aspects of that are not bound by time at all. However, we have put time constraints on it through religion. We start at 11, and by 12 we want to be out, that kind of thing, or 7 o'clock on 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, whatever, on Wednesday, and we are within an hour time constraint, and we gone. That's how religion has put those constraints on it. But however, what we are doing does not have any time constraints whatsoever. We have one thing: what time do we start? And then whether we end 30 minutes from that start time or 3 hours from that start time, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we are obedient. We are obedient to the spiritual. We are obedient to the I Am who guides us on this journey of understanding for the benefit of humanity. I hope that helps us.
Yes.
Evelyn, I know you have a question. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you for the question asked. But let me add one thing to what's been shared. If you look at all of the 6 days of creation, it said, and the evening and the morning was the first day. The evening and the morning was the second day. If you'll note, when the when on the seventh day, when the Creator ceased, there was no evening and morning pronouncement. In other words, it was almost like Sabbath is a continual thing now, and spiritually has to do with what you guys just talked about, Pastor, with the essence of being and functioning as the Elohim in all that we think, in all that we say, and in all that we do. So it implies that the Sabbath is continuing to unfold itself. Evelyn?
That resonates.
Yeah, I just wanted us to be clear. So I can be at my desk and have the Sabbath and experience the Sabbath. Am I not correct with that?
Yes, you can.
Okay. And as far as working on Sundays, which I never had to do, but there are people who have to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Am I correct with that as well?
Right.
Okay, because a lot of people get railed because they work on Sundays or because they work in a place to sell alcohol, which is religion. But I just wanted us to be clear on that, because some people have to work on on Sundays, excuse me.
Yes, you're right.
It's not about the doing, it's about the being.
Bob, it's Ron.
Yes, sir.
I had you mentioned what I wanted to say, that the Sabbath never closed, and I want to go back to something I just said at the onset when she talked about the pandemic and the pause that we had in the earth. That to me was the type of ceasing that we're talking about. It allows for a refreshing. It allows for a reflection, a pondering, if you will, and the other side of Sabbath that it never, as you say, it never ceases, but it always allows for a return to beginning. So we call Sabbath being something that we call 8 the new beginning, but it's a return to beginning. So we look at this, and I think I don't have notes or details of what we were studying when this pandemic first started and everything ceased, but I think it is a point where our thinking and our things start to shift for us, the energy shift for us spiritually, and took us to, for lack of a better explanation, to a different plane, a different place of awareness. So that is to a part of this. Things cease, and it opens up more to you and gives you a more opportunity to see new beginnings and to be a creator. So and all of that goes hand in hand with what's already been said. But thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And who would have known we've been here 2 years later? But you got to remember, the Bible also says a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as a day, meaning it is beyond the constraints of time as we know it. And so that day of ceasing will be however long it takes, for whatever length it takes. The work, when we were talking in Genesis, the work that was spoken of was the creating of the world as the home for the human and the creating of the human. The rest was God's rest, the Creator's rest. And that rest was not because the Creator was tired, because it spoke, it created with words, but it's more like a ceasing and just acknowledging and being pleased with what one had done, in a sense, and what was it had created. And again, the evening and the day didn't close as in previous verses, so it continues. I'd like to finish up something. I'd like to go to Exodus 16, verse 17, and go through several verses fairly quickly to show you something different. Exodus 16. This is, if you remember, this is about, oh gosh, this is still, I think, in the wilderness, and this is the time of manna being given to the people. They had grumbled about why we should have stayed in Egypt, blah, 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 blah. We could have died there instead of out here, grumbling, mutterings. And so God gave them the manna in the morning and the I guess it's quail or fowl at night, and told them that, gather the manna, and told them, and in verse 16, in verse 17 through 18, some gathered a little and some gathered a lot. But the issue was it all measured the same. When they measured it by their standard of measurement, it all measured the same. So all had as much as they needed to eat. In verse 19 through 20, this is when Moses is talking to them about not leaving any of the manna that you gathered. Don't leave it over until the next day. And here it was a way of showing not only obedience, teaching obedience, but so people can see what happens during the course of disobedience. And some of them didn't do what Moses said. They didn't pay him any attention, and some of them left it over until the morning. And what happened is it stank and it became maggot infested. Verse 21, and I'm still in chapter 16. The people gathered the manna every morning, each as much as what was needed to eat. And when the sun grew hot, the manna melted. That was the natural course of what was expected to happen. You gathered only what you needed when it was time, at the appointed time, and then it melted. This implies to me that whatever they got was fresh every day. Fresh every day. Except that one time they left it over and they got maggots. But anyway, verse 22, on the sixth day they gathered double the amount of food. And when all the chieftains came and told Moses that they'd done that, this is what Moses said, verse 23. He told them, this is what the Lord meant. Tomorrow is a day of rest, a holy Sabbath of the Lord. This is the first time the actual word Sabbath, although ceasing means Sabbath, this is the first time the word Sabbath was used as it related to the manna and gathering. A holy Sabbath of the Lord. Bake what you would bake and boil what you boil, and all that is left put aside to be kept until morning. Now, heretofore, he told them, don't keep anything until the morning, because it's gonna, what happened was it turned them out. But here, he directed them to keep it until the next day, until the seventh day, to cover what they would need to eat during the seventh day. They did as Moses told them to do, verse 24. And it didn't turn foul, and there were no maggots in it. Verse 25 through 26 talked about Moses telling them, eat today. Today is the Sabbath of the Lord. You will not find the manna on the plain. So that's when they realized that when Moses told them to get enough on the sixth day that will take them through the seventh day, that they had enough for the seventh day. And again, it did not turn foul. Verse 26, 6 days you shall gather it. On the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will be none. And so this is how the people were taught and reminded about what the Sabbath was. Because again, the Sabbath was woven into the tapestry of creation. Abraham adhered to the Sabbath. Many people before these Israelites in Exodus adhered to the Sabbath, but they've spent 400 plus years. Remember, they'd been doing what they were doing, working out like they were working, submitting to the gods that they were submitting to, and so this was like reteaching them in a sense. In other words, you've been freed from the tyranny of working all the time, the tyranny of being exposed to these idol gods, all of that. And so now it's almost like they were being retrained in a sense about what the spiritual underpinning of what they were supposed to be doing. And as a part of being retrained, they learned what to do as related to the Sabbath. And the Sabbath then was supposed to be, if you look then at Exodus, where are we? 20, verse 2. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. You shall not do any work. Now count these with me. You, the you that is talking about is the man, the person and his wife. Your son, your daughter, that's 3. Your male, your female slave, that's 5. Your cattle, that's 6. The stranger, that's 7 within your settlement. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and the sea, and all of them and all that is in them. And he rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath and hallowed it. So, in other words, he was covering everybody when these 7 items were these 7 people and animals and were listed. It speaks to the completeness and the entirety of what this Sabbath incorporated. In other words, even your slaves, even your house servants, even your animals, everything deserves that day of ceasing, that day of rest. Everything needs to be revived and to be renewed. And so part of what they then started, part of what the Sabbath means is 2 things now to the Jews. For them, it meant honoring and remembering and revering the one, the creator, who created the heavens and the earth and the human and the day of ceasing. And secondly, they remember Exodus and how they were slaves there and how the creator freed them from slavery. And so then they translate that to look at, well, now we are freed from the slavery of work, of the 9 to 5s or the 9 to 12s and the 9 to 14s or whatever that period of time is that confined them to meeting a schedule or meeting a deadline or meeting a commitment or whatever the work of that day entailed. A lot of it entailed the economics of doing what they did according to a certain limit of what was required to be made that day, just like the Israelites when they made the bricks back in Egypt. Once at some point in time, it got to the point where it was never enough. And then it got to the point where they took the straw away and they said, now you make the bricks and you make as much or more than you did before. So the issue is the freedom from being enslaved to the mindset, the economics, the structure of this realm based on money as is God, to a freedom to remember and to acknowledge the creator, who it is and who you are, and your relationship to it. It freed them to be able to spend time with families. And it also freed the animals and the servants to have time themselves. For those who were reverent, it freed them to reconnect, if you will, on a spiritual level in a different way than they did during the 6 days. So that's what this came to mean for the Israelites. The question is, what does it mean for us? What does this mean for us? What are the Egypts that we are constantly freed from? Not just the one time that the Israelites were thinking about, but what are the things that we are constantly being freed from? This cramped space that we're constantly being, that our chains are constantly being broken, to free us to know who we are, and to free us to realize and to reconnect and to understand the Creator and the Creator in us. So one of the sages, Akiva, in the Midrash, said that just as a house testifies to the builder and the existence of a garment testifies to the weaver, so the existence of the world testifies to the God who fashioned it. And so, in other words, it's a time now that not only are we free, but nature is freed from us in a sense. When we don't toil the land, even a farmer knows you don't plant your land, you don't plant the same thing repeatedly every year. It needs time to rest. So the day of ceasing extends not only to the creature and the created, but to the land, to all else that's created. I'll stop there and see what comments you have.
So when I think about what Esther raised and what you just explained, that I see it as a deeper understanding of what it means when I think it was Ron Hodge who said that the Sabbath is continuous. It never ends. I think that was a clearer explanation of what that looks like. So it's opportunity, I suppose, to continuously ponder what we were created to be so that we never forget it. Or when opportunities to be in despair present themselves, we remember the Sabbath, the ceasing, or we cease from our being depressed because of the circumstances. And the way we do that is by remembering Sabbath. Does that make sense?
Yes. Are there any other comments or questions?
I guess I don't have. I listen to what you just said and Pastor's comment as well. How much faith or how much awareness, better than faith, I guess, do we have in our ability to create with words? We talk all the time about watching what you say and what you think, but that's real to me. Even the words of Moses to the people, had power, and it took a minute, but they recognized that. And as creators, I don't think we give that as much thought maybe as we should, or maybe we're just not as aware of it as we should. I'm not quite sure what I'm asking, but I just noticed that in the 7 days we are more doing, we're more action, and this, if we look at this from a spiritual perspective, or the things that were needed were done with words. And just an observation.
But Ron, I think we are doing it, and I think we are. Maybe you see it clearer than we think when it comes to creating with words. Because how many times have we created the scenarios of what was going to happen in the meeting, and that's exactly what we got. We talk about creating the world you live in. If you're always negative, you live in a negative world, and all these negative things happen to you because you become a magnet for them. In that regard, I think we talked about it, but I agree with you when it comes to recreating this world in the image that it was created before in the beginning. I do agree that when it comes to that, I think it's more difficult for us to embrace the reality that we do this with words. However, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. We created the environment that we live in right now. We created the environment where Trump could be elected and pull the scab off of the sore that's been this country forever. Now the pulse is running from that sore, and it stinks, and it's repulsive. But in order for it to heal, that must happen. We did that with words. The COVID, we did that with words because we wanted change, regardless of what it took. And it took shutting everything down so we could see the results of what it looks like when men cease. The period of COVID was Sabbath, a Sabbath that was instituted by our Creator at our request by saying whatever it takes. And in doing so, what happened? It gave us 3 days. 3 days we are together. We are one in terms of our understandings of the Scriptures. And our desire was that, to understand. And the teachers, we would go to Philly, or we would meet here or someplace else in our conclaves to talk about the things that we want to understand about the Scriptures and our environment. However, now every teacher has opportunity to be on 3 times a week, as well as those who are raising the questions, who are teachers as well, by simply raising the questions. All of us are there, but we would not be there with we're pulling the puzzle pieces together if it were not for Sabbath. So I think the creation that if we step back a moment and look at what's transpiring, we will clearly see that we have created with words. And now that we have that history, it makes it a lot easier. And I also think that one of the reasons you were told to raise this question is because we needed to step back and see what we have created, as opposed to just mentioning it while we're teaching, but to step back and take a real view of what has been created by our words, our desires.
And I would add that if you look at the time frame in which that has occurred, we're talking what? 3 years, 4 years, 5 years maybe, that not only have we seen a major shifting and a tearing down of structures, the idols, if you will, of this world, until we got to this period of COVIDness and pausing and ceasing. Well, yeah, we used to say pause, but it's ceasing. Everything ceased. It was more than a pause. A pause implies that you're going to take back up right where you started. That's not what we want to do. So even the time frame, if you look at the time frame for the Israelites, you know, it was all of that time, and then they got to the wilderness, and then 40 years wandering in the wilderness. All of that happened. But if you look at what happened now, and from a world perspective, it all occurred in terms of actually manifesting in no time, comparatively speaking, of course.
Yeah, I can see that.
Can I be
I'm sorry,
clear
go
about
ahead.
something? Sorry, I just want to be clear about something. This is Audrey. You said we do it all with words, but isn't it not only words but vibration? Because sometimes we don't know the words to say, but we have a clear desire and a motivation that kind of creates a vibration within us. So it can be words,
Yeah,
or the
even
vibration.
Thoughts have vibrations.
Yeah.
Even thoughts have vibrations.
Yeah.
I think it's vibration, period, because words are vibration.
Right.
So it's it's the vibration. And another thing, when we talk about this, it would not have happened if the words we spoke or our energetic desires were not in rhythm with the universe. So the vibration of the universe and our words were the same, and that's what brought about the change. Now, the verbalizing of it is for the benefit of all of us in terms of being so accustomed to hearing with our ears until we don't recognize sometimes when we are hearing and speaking without uttering a word, without making the sound of a word. And that's seen when, for example, when you start, Audrey, talking about what is now we're talking about the pause of COVID, to stop everything, the air clean, etc. That's exactly where I was going with that. So what we actually did, we were communicating without even realizing it and saying the same thing. The difference is that you verbalized it so that every one of us could hear it, and in doing so, embrace it. And that's where the spiritual communication, that's where we began to be in tune with the spiritual communications that we have. Thank you. That's all I have anyway.
Thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts that you want to share that won't wait until tomorrow afternoon? Any other thoughts? Well, yes?
So you mean the vibration connect to everything?
Vibration can connect, yes. The question is, what kind of vibration are you having? Because even denser vibrations, like in a bass instrument, it connects to something as well. And the intent of the vibration.
Yeah, explain.
Go ahead, Charles.
Nah, when you're talking about the vibration, the tenth of vibration, I'll get ready to tell you to explain.
Oh, and the intent of the vibration, the intent itself, the intent is a sort of a desire. It has its own vibration as well. So even as was said earlier, as Pastor and Andre, even if you don't verbalize it, the desire, the intent has its own type of vibration, resonance. So yes, everything connects through vibration.
I got it.
Okay. All right. Think on what we've been talking about, and then think on what you see and what you hear, and let's see what questions you have tomorrow that the universe has answers for. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for your attentiveness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, fam.
Have a good afternoon, everybody.